we have access on a daily basis to senior leaders and to, I guess, influential decision makers who can make changes in the hiring structure and what they're doing.
Over the last couple of years, we've made sure that as a business, our culture and the service that we offer is a representation of what we want to see in society. So we will be talking to these senior leaders about some of the challenges and getting into detail around some of the initiatives that have been successful and worked for them.
What we really would like to do is kind of normalise the conversation and get people comfortable with having conversations around diversity and inclusion.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the DEI Bucket List podcast/vodcast. Today we have Megan Giannini, who is the Global Head of Talent Acquisition at Philips. I'll hand the floor over to Megan. Thanks for coming along. It'd be great to hear your story.
Hi, Magnus. Thanks for having me today. Very much looking forward to this dialogue. So hi, everyone. I'm Megan Giannini, as Magnus mentioned. I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, but I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and also have lived on the East Coast as well, as lots of global travel. Been in a variety of different human resources roles, from HR business partner to head of talent management. I've been the chief HR officer for a company, as well as been involved in lots of post-merger integration projects. And I'm very much looking forward to chatting about DEI with you all today.
Fantastic. And I think that's why I was so keen to speak to you and for people that kind of tune in and watch this show to kind of hear your views and insight, because you've seen it from so many different lenses. And obviously, as you mentioned, you're from the US, currently working in Amsterdam, which is great. And obviously at some point we will touch on the difference and how you can kind of attack these agendas with the difference in geographies, if you like. But let's kick off by kind of talking about the Pride Month, and obviously that month has come to an end now. But it would be good to hear your thoughts and some of the things that you may have come across in terms of campaigns and whatnot over the course of Pride Month.
Yes, I'm very passionate about this topic in general. I think coming from San Francisco and having a lot of friends and family who are in the Pride community, I feel it's very important that employees feel comfortable being who they are at work and not feeling like they need to cover that up. I believe in that principally, but I also believe that it's good for the business as well to have people be able to speak their minds, and we get the most out of teams when people are themselves. So I've had some great experiences working for companies that really make this a priority and have senior executives who are visibly involved. They're out in parades and with floats and talking about and singing about being who you are. And I think that really role models the values of the company and also the importance of the Pride movement.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And obviously there is a huge importance on some of the stuff that companies put out publicly and whatnot around the Pride campaign and so on and so forth. But how important would you say it is? Let's talk about just the individuals as employees and whatnot. What impact have you seen when companies do take this seriously and put on certain initiatives to celebrate Pride Month? How important is that? And have you seen the benefits of that with colleagues previously?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the individual stories you hear about, I don't feel comfortable talking at the water cooler about my weekend because everyone's talking about their husband, their wife, and their kids, and I have a different personal life. Yeah. And so I think that's a typical environment. So I feel that it's been really important to talk about all the different ways to live and all the different types of families one can have very visibly, so that people recognize that when they go to the water cooler, that different lifestyles are welcome. And so I think it's extremely important for senior leaders, for communications, for HR, for the diversity and inclusion teams to make an effort to communicate about the values of the company being truly inclusive and welcoming all people.
Yeah. And just touching on the piece around communicating that, because, for example, you could be within an organization and feel uncomfortable at the water cooler, like you've mentioned. where you don't necessarily need to feel uncomfortable, because certainly people aren't looking at you in a different way. But would you say that unless that is actually communicated, then you'll always kind of stumble upon that problem? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a chance, right? So everyone's an individual and everyone's unique, and some people are going to be more comfortable being open about their personal life than others if it's different. But I definitely think it helps, right? Even as a working mother, right, in a corporation, seeing other working mothers who are doing what I'm doing helps me believe in myself, and helps me also want to be a role model for others. And I think that goes for Pride as well. And so seeing those role models certainly can be helpful in giving people the confidence that they need.
Fantastic. Okay. And not so much moving away from that, but talking about the whole kind of like broader piece, with your experience over the years from the kind of HR side of things, or should I say the kind of HR director, CHRO type side of things, now to kind of the global head of talent acquisition side of things. What do you think are the key ingredients to success for making a company more diverse and inclusive?
Yeah, great question. And certainly my response will not be completely comprehensive. I'm sure there are many other people with great ideas about this, but just a few thoughts. First of all, it's support from the top. I think that's essential to have that, the messaging come out that the organization fosters inclusion and diversity and equity. I've also had many conversations with leadership teams about the topic of setting targets around inclusion and diversity. And while there are always pros and cons, I do think it helps. So if we have clear goals about increasing diversity in senior levels, I think that helps with focus and prioritization as well. I also know that discipline has to be there, because everyone is busy, everyone has a lot going on. And so having the organizational discipline and focus is critical. And one way that we've been able to do that in my experience is by truly cascading these goals deeper in the organization. So even down to talent acquisition. So having the teams really prioritize diverse candidate pools, diverse interview panels, right? Making sure that we're removing bias from the way that we post jobs, having them be too male oriented or female oriented, right? So we check those types of things, but also making sure that we remove bias from, or we try our best to remove bias. It's difficult to do, right? From interview questions as well. So all of these things I consider discipline. But I also really feel that it's everyone's job to foster a diverse and inclusive environment, and it's not just up to executives.
No, I totally agree, and a lot of the people I spoke to have talked about that support from the top for sure. But I always feel, and listen, I may be wrong, I haven't worked in the kind of global corporate type organizations that a lot of the people I speak to have, but I always feel like it's an accountability piece, right, in terms of the individuals across the business. So yeah, that certainly resonates. And there's another thing that we kind of spoke about that I was really interested in, just when we've been catching up over recent weeks, and that was the employee resource groups. Can you go into a bit more detail around that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been at a couple of different companies who made employee resource groups a priority, and employee resource groups are basically collections of individuals who share a commonality, right? So it could be women, it could be Black employees, it could be gay employees. So it's different groups that come together to find common agendas that they want to further together. They also are able to find community, celebrate progress, but also get visibility to things that maybe still need to be addressed and haven't been yet. So I think this is a great method, right, to create these communities, to foster inclusion, but also to elevate the visibility of important topics.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And in terms of in terms of some of the topics and things like that, who would kind of come up with any given topic for these employee resource groups? Would it be kind of sitting down with a group of people and trying to get an understanding of what, not missing is probably the wrong word, but but I think you kind of get where I'm going with this. How do you kind of come up with the topics for any kind of given group?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I've observed works best is if the team itself self-organizes, but does it in partnership with the inclusion and diversity teams if there's enough capacity to do that, or sometimes if it's a smaller organization, it will be the HR function or the executive team or the CEO even. So so I think there's quite self-organizing, but with support from leadership in different capacities. And then what I've also seen work well is if there's a specific topic, like for example, navigating your career, let's say, is a key thing to help diverse talent grow and create networks. And so as the HR organization, we will come in if invited, right? And to share some tips and advice about how one might navigate their career, focus on their own learning and development, find a mentor, make sure everyone knows where to find the job postings, what our policies are around that, and help them with all the tools that they need to be as successful as they want to be within the organization. So that's an example of where there could be a partnership. The team, the ERG the employee resource group would pull in the relevant HR expertise to help give them the tools and the resources to navigate their careers.
Okay, brilliant. And listen, there's obviously a topic that's pretty close to me, as I know it's close to you as well. So I've got 2 young children, and me and my wife certainly find it difficult at times to juggle between work and parenting. So when you talk about these employee resource groups, would there or is there groups that kind of support working parents and making sure that organizations are as inclusive as possible and accommodating to working parents?
Yeah, great question, and something that I think all working parents struggle with, right? That balance between work and family, and I really love both, right? So I often say my favorite part of the day is going to work, and my favorite part of the day is coming home, right? I'm grateful for both, but it doesn't mean it's easy. So lots can be done. Yes, absolutely. Employee resource groups focused on working parents can help. I've been involved in organizations where we've fostered kind of bring your kid to work day, so people get to know families, and that kind of personalizes it a bit more. Days where we celebrate moms or dads, Mother's Days, Father's Days, where we promote different types of resources to support working moms and dads. I think it's really important. I also think that it's critical that any manager, any people manager, is sensitive, whether they have children or not, to, given the question you've asked, there's other sensitivities as well, to the needs of working parents as it relates to dropping kids off at school, being able to be there at home and not on calls during dinner or preparing dinner if that's important to the parents. So I think it's key for managers with and without families to be respectful of those hours that are just critical, I think, for family values. And one story to share is when I took my first executive level role. I remember I was saying, how am I going to manage this with 2 kids at home? And I love my work, but I really want to be there for my kids. I was looking for a role model, and I kept asking, well, who could there be for me to be kind of a mentor? And we couldn't come up with anyone at the time. And then there were 2 women in the room with me, and they just looked at me and they said, well, we need you to be ours. And I think that really kind of gave me the chills in the moment, and still does, even when I tell the story. So I think what I've tried to do is be a visible mother in my career. And to say, I'm leaving, it's Mother's Day, my 4-year-old is giving me a massage, right, in the classroom, which happened once. And I don't just sneak away. I don't just sneak away and say, I have a dentist appointment, or hopefully no one will notice. I say, I'm going to be with my child. And I think that empowers others to feel safe doing the same. And I think I truly believe that when our personal needs and our family needs are met, we're better in our careers. We're better for our employer, and we enjoy our work more because we know the things that matter to us personally are tended to and respected.
And do you think it's an ongoing education piece, right? Because how do you ever really, when you talk about the managers and making sure that they understand and respect the things that you have, the commitments you have away from the workplace. How do you deliver that education piece? Is it through making sure that you're visible, or is it through actually kind of putting on workshops and things like that? How would you deliver that message to someone who's absolutely oblivious to the challenges that come with parenting?
Yeah, all of the above. I think that messages from the top again help, but I think seeing those messages come to life is the most important thing. And I would say a big part of that is how you select talent. Who do you bring into your organization, and what are their values? And do they espouse the values that you believe are the best for the company, but also for your own values, right? Do they foster those values? And if your company values diversity, equity, inclusion, then it's going to be really important that you're hiring and promoting people who visibly role model those different behaviors. So I think it's multi-pronged, right? It's also about making the time to have these types of conversations. I think even though someone may value family, they may not have been cultured to talk about it. So I think creating the opportunities to have these dialogues with our teams, and we're doing that now post-pandemic, to really talk about what does it take to be at our best, and triggering these types of team dialogues. I believe that's where it really comes to life, because if you just hear a message from a CEO in a webcast once a year, it doesn't feel real, right?
Yeah. No, understood. And then when you talk about kind of bringing the right type of talent into your organization, who have the right values, you're obviously trying to kind of create an inclusive culture from the start of that kind of recruitment journey, if you like. But how do you then keep that talent moving forward? Obviously, retention is a big thing for all companies, and everybody kind of suffers in some way, shape, or form at some point. But how do you go about the retention piece, and certainly making sure that once you kind of identify talent within certain underrepresented communities or ethnicities or whatever it may be, how do you then retain that talent? Is that, I'm assuming, with the use of some of the things that we've already touched upon, but if you could just elaborate from a retention perspective.
Yeah, all the things we've talked about before. I think the ERGs, the employee resource groups, and making sure that the underrepresented talent is connected with the relevant employee resource groups is really important. I think that they need to continue to feel that the environment is one where they feel respected, valued, right? And so the culture and active cultural management of fostering inclusive environments. I think career development for all, but also for underrepresented groups is really key, as well as mentoring and helping people find those mentors that they respect and can learn from, either who have a similar background or maybe have some similarities and have some differences, and they feel that they can really complement their growth. So I think all those things really help. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It's I feel a constant effort for any organization, any team leader, any executive, right, to make sure that we're always being as inclusive as we can be. But those are some of the things that I've seen work. And the good news is, I think over the last year, it warms my heart to just see the demand for underrepresented groups, and so that is exactly how it should be in my mind.
No, agreed. Totally agreed. And you've mentioned mentors a couple of times now, so it'd be rude of me not to kind of ask you to go a bit deeper into that. So you've obviously benefited, I assume, being a woman in a senior leadership position and a parent. You've obviously benefited from mentoring, as you've said. How important is mentoring?
I believe it's extremely important. I don't think I could personally be where I am today without the mentors that I've had in my life. And some of them have been more formal and some more informal. But sometimes you get the question, what's the difference between a mentor and a coach? And at least in the world of HR, the way that we differentiate those two is a coach is helping you solve your own problems. So they're trained to lead someone through a series of questions via a bespoke process for them, to help them decide how they can figure things out that they're struggling with, right? But a mentor is different in the sense that they usually have some experience the mentee wants or needs, and a mentor is one who gives advice to. So a mentor is someone you can go to and say, hey, I really want to take on a new role in this space. Any advice on how to get there, right? Or I'm trying to build my relationships with this senior leader. We have a meeting coming up. How can I prepare and do the best job possible, right? So I think mentors are basically people who can teach us all things that we want to learn, and they're everywhere, right? I think the good news is most people are really happy to help and mentor talent. So my encouragement would be to just go out and ask, right? You may be scary at first, but I think most people find that others really want to help them.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I've never. So I did in my previous career, obviously playing football. I would always look to senior players growing up, and I'd ask certain questions and whatnot. But since kind of transitioning across, it's not because there are still things that are obviously just completely foreign to me. It's something I've always been super interested in. I speak to a lot of senior people, so I think I'm certainly going to kind of take your advice here and see if I can get involved and have a few mentors. How important though would you say it is to have a mentor internally in your kind of current organization?
I don't think it's that important. I think it can help depending on the situation. So I think it's also sometimes better to have them not in your organization, right?
Fair.
So I think it depends on the situation. The other thing I'll add in terms of career development is for people who you work closely with, one thing that has really, I think, helped me become a better professional, let's put it that way, is asking for feedback. So this would probably be better to have someone who is in your organization, but just being aware of all the teachings around you that are available to you if you just ask for them. And so I'm always amazed at how much more you can learn when you ask questions. And I think asking questions for feedback is a gift, right? People will appreciate that you respect their opinion, and you always learn something. So you don't have to act on all the feedback, but it's a great way to just continue to learn and grow in micro doses, right? Throughout the day, throughout the week.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. Well, listen, we've had some great insight there for sure. I'm sure there's lots of things that have been said there that will resonate with people that are listening. But before we let you go, Megan, in keeping with the theme of this podcast, what's on your personal bucket list?
Well, many things, but one that's on my mind now as we're all able to start traveling again is to take my children to Africa.
Nice.
For a few reasons. I think it's a beautiful country. I've been fortunate enough to go a couple of times, but I'd like to give them the experience to travel to Africa, to get to know the culture there, and also see the beautiful landscape and people and animals.
Brilliant. Jealous, actually. Can I come or?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Have you got anywhere specific in mind, or you'll literally just kind of do a tour, or you'll go to, like, I don't know, South Africa, Kenya, or wherever?
I've been to Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa.
Okay.
I would go back to any of them for different reasons, but I also always like going somewhere new. So I'd have to do a bit more research to say which would be the next country I'd go to, but I would certainly take my children back to any of those three. Very rich countries, beautiful people, and landscape and animals.
Brilliant. I'm sure they'll absolutely love it. And listen, we've loved having you as a guest on the show today. And like I say, I'm sure lots of the insight and points that you've made will resonate with people that are listening. So listen, thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you for spending the time with me, and I hope some of my insights are helpful to others as well.
I'm sure they will be. Thanks, Megan.
All right. Thanks, Magnus. Bye.